Hello guys, welcome to Behind the Crime Scene. Buckle up because the update today in the Gus Lamont case feels different. Not just bigger, not just more intense, different. Because for the first time since little 4-year-old Gus vanished from that remote South Australian station, we're seeing investigators take on some of the hardest, most dangerous search conditions they've faced yet. We're talking tactical officers abseiling into deep, narrow mine shafts under brutal 30-degree heat, using belay systems like they're scaling the side of a cliff just to search for a missing boy. And right there, the public is asking, why now? Why mine shafts? And why this sudden shift in the tone of the investigation? Well, it gets even more interesting. Because while police are sweating it out in the outback, a former homicide detective, and not just any detective, but one of the most recognizable in Australia, Gary Jubelin, has stepped forward to say publicly that investigators must now consider all possibilities, including human intervention. Let that sink in. This is one of the few times anyone connected to the case, even indirectly, has acknowledged the possibility that Gus didn't simply wander away. And once you line that up with the fact that, after 10 days of searching, 4 days of foot patrols, 470 square kilometers of land, divers in a dam, mounted police, aerial scans, Aboriginal trackers, and now mine shafts, not one single item belonging to Gus has been found. No hat, no shirt, no boot, nothing. You start to see why experts are quietly starting to shift the tone. So today, legends, we're diving deep into what's driving this fourth search, why the focus on mine shafts, what Jubelin's comments really mean, and how this all strangely lines up with what many locals claim they already suspected, months before police ever looked there. And as always, everything you hear in this video is opinion, analysis, and speculation. We don't accuse, we ask questions, because asking the right questions is the only way to get to the truth. All right, let's go behind the crime scene. So let's start with the one thing everyone is talking about. Police are back at Oak Park Station, again, but the energy of this search feels completely different. Instead of regular search teams combing the scrub, police have now deployed tactical star group officers, a dedicated search task force, Task Force Horizon, high-angle gear, belays, specialist descent equipment, a larger-than-usual police presence on site. These mine shafts aren't shallow holes in the dirt. They're narrow, unstable, deep, vertical tunnels, the kind you don't go into unless you're trained for high-risk extraction or recovery missions. And remember, we're in the outback. The heat is brutal, the terrain is rough, the shafts are isolated, scattered randomly across the property. 6 of them, spaced between 5.5 kilos and 12 kilometers from the homestead. That's a huge distance for anyone, let alone a 4-year-old, to reach on their own. So here's the first clever question. Why are police searching so far away from the home unless they now believe Gus didn't walk there? Because if you look at the new search area, it doesn't match the original theory of a wandering child. It matches something else. Something no one wanted to say out loud until now. And that brings us to the next part. Gary Jubelin, the former detective famous for his work on the William Tyrrell case, was interviewed on the Today Show about the new search effort. His words were precise, carefully chosen, and very intentional. Police will look back at all the information they've got and explore all the opportunities. The fact they're searching so far away from where Gus first disappeared suggests to me they're looking at possible intervention. Gary Jubelin. Now listen to that last line again. Possible intervention. He didn't say animal attack. He didn't say wandered off. He didn't say accident. He said intervention, and this is important. Jubelin is not part of the investigation. He has no reason to sugarcoat or protect anyone. He's speaking purely from experience, and his experience tells him this: police do not search 12 kilometers away unless they've started to question the original story. And when you add that to what Superintendent Mark Cyrus said weeks ago, 4-year-olds drop everything. The fact we haven't found a hat or a shoe or something is unusual. Well, the picture starts getting clearer. If you've searched hundreds of square kilometers, drained a dam, deployed trackers, and still found nothing, then maybe the answer isn't out there. Maybe it never was. At least, that's the opinion a lot of people are starting to form. You know what makes this case so bizarre? Not that a child went missing. That happens. Not that it happened in the outback. That happens too. Not even that there were initial inconsistencies. The truly bizarre part is nothing. Not a single piece of physical evidence has surfaced. And let's go through this slowly, because this is unbelievable. Police have searched 470 square kilometers over multiple phases, done a 10-day search with locals, trackers and police, drained a 4.5-meter deep dam, deployed police divers, scoured a 5.5-kilometer radius on foot, used polair, performed aerial sweeps over 470 square kilometers, used SES, ADF, local volunteers, brought in some of the best trackers in Australia, had now descended into 6 mine shafts, and guess how much they've found? Nothing, not a footprint, not a hat, not a boot, not a scrap of clothing, not a drag mark. Not a disturbance in the soil, not a broken blade of grass that says, a child walked here. Nothing. And here's where we have to ask one of the biggest questions of the whole video. How does a child leave zero trace in 470 square kilometers unless the child never walked into that environment to begin with? This is where investigators start reconsidering not just the search strategy, but the timeline, and that's where we bring in the locals. For weeks now, people around the Junta area have said something that many dismissed as gossip. They said they hadn't seen Gus for months before the missing persons report. Some said 3 months. Some said at least 4. Then others said, no, it's been 6. 6 months, half a year. Now, before anyone freaks out, these are rumors, nothing confirmed, and we treat them as such. We're not here to accuse anyone. But we are here to ask why so many locals are independently saying the same thing. And here's what makes this rumor so powerful. Nobody, not one neighbor, has come forward to publicly contradict it. Add to that, police suddenly searching 12 kilometers away. Police descending mine shafts, police acknowledging all possibilities. A former homicide detective saying, intervention. 0 evidence in hundreds of square kilometers. Well, you can see why this rumor started looking a lot less like gossip and a lot more like something investigators may now be considering. And if police are considering it, that's an opinion, not a fact. It would explain the entire search strategy shift. Because if Gus wasn't seen in months, then searching a tight radius is pointless. You look for transport routes, you look for dump sites, you look for deep shafts, you look where someone might hide something they don't want found. And that's exactly what's happening. The mine shafts being searched aren't beside the house. They're not near where Gus played. They're not even close to the original radius police thought he could walk. The closest shaft is 5.5 kilometers away. The furthest is 12 kilometers. No 4-year-old walks that far in the Australian outback, in boots, in heat, in rough terrain, without dropping a single item or leaving a single mark. That's not speculation. That's basic child behavior. So why search them? Why are police risking Star Group officers in vertical shafts, in scorching heat, in dangerous, unstable tunnels? Because mine shafts are classic disposal sites, and again, this is all opinion and analysis. But every investigator knows that when a search shifts from find the boy to clear the shafts, something has changed. Something big. Police don't say it publicly. They rarely do. But their actions are speaking louder than anything. The question is, Did they get new information, or did they finally start doubting the original story? The timeline as presented has always been 5 p.m. Gus seen playing in a dirt mound 5:30 p.m. Gus is gone 8:30 p.m. Police notified? Father notified much later. Next 10 days. Giant search next month. Dam drained now. Mine shafts. But let's look at a detail from early October. Superintendent Cyrus said, 4-year-olds drop everything. Meaning, if Gus walked any meaningful distance, he would have left a trail. But he didn't. No trail, no items, no interruptions in the soil, nothing. So either the timeline is accurate but literally miraculous, or biologically impossible, or the timeline is hiding something. Let's ask a viewer question that will explode the comment section. If a child disappears at 5 p.m., why are police searching 12 kilometers away 2 months later and finding absolutely nothing between point A and point B? What happened to the 11.9 kilometers in between? Why is it empty? Why aren't searchers finding any trace of movement? Is that because there was none? That's speculation, but fair speculation. And look, legends, this is the part where I've got to be honest. The public is losing faith in the wandering off theory. You can see it online. You can hear it in conversations. People aren't stupid. The signs don't fit. And when official statements say there is no evidence of foul play, but the investigation looks like drain a dam, search 470 kilometers, abseil into mine shafts, bring in star group, follow all possibilities. Escalate instead of scale down, the public understandably asks, why are investigators acting like something happened if they're publicly saying nothing happened? And that's exactly where the locals' rumour suddenly stops sounding crazy and starts sounding like the one explanation that ties everything together. Again, rumours, not evidence, but rumours don't usually align this perfectly with police behaviour. Unless there's a reason. If it turned out that Gus hadn't been seen in months, the entire timeline collapses. Everything we thought we knew becomes meaningless. The last sighting, the 5 p.m. story, the sand mound, the window, the distance he could walk, the ability for him to drop items, the 30-minute gap, none of it holds, because it wouldn't be a September disappearance. It would be something earlier, and if it was earlier, then the case shifts completely. It becomes historical, it becomes behavioral, it becomes an investigation of actions, not accidents. Is that why police are suddenly searching disposal sites, not present sites? Again, just opinion. But this is exactly how investigators pivot when they realize the original story doesn't fit the physical reality. Police have to be extremely careful with wording. They can't say, we suspect foul play without evidence. They can't say, we're reconsidering the timeline without a statement. They can't say, locals might be right without confirmation. But what can they do? They can search more aggressively, change the radius, explore new lines of inquiry, check elimination areas, bring in specialist units, follow tips quietly, clear mine shafts, drain dams, conduct recovery-style searches, expand instead of scale down, which is exactly what they're doing. The words say, no evidence of foul play. The actions say something entirely different. Let's connect the dots one more time. Police have now acknowledged they are exploring all possibilities. Gary Jublin says the new search suggests intervention. Massive searches found nothing. No items, no footprints, no physical trace. The new target areas are mine shafts up to 12 kilometers away. The family has barely engaged publicly. And locals claim, repeatedly, that they hadn't seen Gus in months. Not proof, not fact, but a rumor strong enough that the entire investigation now looks like it's being steered in that direction. So here's the final, clever, behind-the-crime scene question. What if police didn't choose this new direction? but simply followed the trail locals were talking about long before anyone else listened? Because right now, the evidence doesn't point to a wandering child. It points to the possibility that the search area has always been in the wrong place. All right, legends, what do you think? Do you think the locals were right all along? Do you think police know more than they can say? Do you think the original timeline fits the facts, or does the shift in the investigation tell you something else? Drop your theories in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspective helps shape where we go next. If you want updates as they break, hit subscribe, because this case is only getting deeper, stranger, and more intense the longer it goes. This is Behind the Crime Scene, and trust me, we're just getting started.